I'm in Barnsley and I am with Mike. And Mike, just to qualify things, in relation to me, who are you?
I'm your auntie's husband.
So uncle-in-law, basically?
Yeah,
Lovely.
more or less, yeah.
And you are from Yorkshire?
I was born in Barnsley a long time ago. Now I'm 73 years of age.
73, fair enough. And it's fair to say you are a socialist of the old class.
I've been a socialist all my life, maybe even a little bit more than a socialist. I used to live on the same street as Arthur Scargill, although he was never a member of the Communist Party. He was a member of the Young Communists, so...
Yeah, so kind of borderline, but
yeah.
then we're going to start getting into the old kind of, oh well, socialism is communism and so on and so forth, and it really isn't.
No, it isn't. No,
it has ideology based from certain communist ideals, I suppose, but it's not actually communism. It still operates in a democratic way, in a democratic system.
That's right. It's a democratic socialism, you can say, which... Using the words, it's akin to the German system, which they're supposed to be democratic socialists. So.
Yeah, so socialism really isn't communism, but that's getting off point. Now, obviously, I was called out by somebody on one of my videos, Mr. A. This is for you, sir. I don't like Jeremy Corbyn. It's my personal view of the man. I don't trust him. I don't think he is the honest politician he says he is. I think he's a bit of a moron, but that's my own personal view. Now, 10 months ago, I said Mr. Corbyn's position was untenable. Okay, because 10 months ago it was the end, just after the EU referendum, he was refusing to step down. Most of the Labour Party MPs were threatening to resign, quite a few of them did. There's been, 3 reshuffles since then. And he's always stood on a platform of quite far left from centre politics. Yep. Obviously he wants a renationalisation and stuff like that, that's obviously in the manifesto. But he's always been anti-Trident. However, he's going to renew that because it's already been voted on in Parliament, so he's not actually standing on his principles. And he's kind of, with this manifesto, he's not... If he was going to be as far left as he was, I mean, he's going to bring back, 10,000 police officers of the 20,000 that have been cut. So he's not even fully undoing everything that, say, a moderate centre-ground Conservative Party has done.
That's true.
Yeah,
but the problem is he doesn't even know how much it's going to cost for 10,000.
No, I know, and that's the other thing.
Which gives you little confidence in him to lead the country.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the manifesto has been costed. Now, McDonnell, the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, I'm gonna bet money he would have been involved in costing the manifesto.
Yeah.
And when asked what the deficit currently stood at, 53 billion at time of recording, he had to Google it. He didn't know.
Yeah.
Again, Diane Abbott, she's quite high up within the party. She would have most likely been involved.
Yes, but she's the most stupid woman I've ever seen involved in politics anyway, so I don't... And maybe that's got to do with the fact that she's a former girlfriend of Jeremy Corbyn, which they lived together at university and shortly after. For quite a while, yeah. And the problem is, it leads to the fact, is it nepotism that she's got shadow Home Secretary? And she doesn't even know how much it's going to cost to have all these extra police?
Yeah, 300 grand.
Yeah.
I mean, just after...
£30 a year for the police.
£30 a year, that was what a police officer earned 30 quid a year back in the late 60s, didn't he?
I think they earned a lot more than that in the late 60s, maybe in 1910.
But the thing is, again, with that, a lot of people will stand there and say, oh, come on, she was under pressure, she was tired, it was a random question she wasn't prepared for. The thing that they miss is it was 10,000 officers, so that is the 10 times table, which is essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just add a 0 on the end. The thing is, off the top of my head, I'd say copper gets, 30 grand a year, then you've got training, sundries, equipment, stuff like that, so call it £45,000 a year, over 10,000 officers, so 45,000 times 10,000, 45 times 10, 450, add the zeros, 450 million. Does that make me more qualified than Diane Abbott?
Well, I don't think it makes you more qualified, but I think you've got a lot more sense than Diana. But
I could cost it slightly closer.
Yeah,
but again, we're running away from the entire thing. I don't want to. I mean, the reason I'm including you in this is you are a socialist of the old school.
I am, yeah.
And we are currently in Barnsley, are we not? Which is that well-known conservative stronghold.
Yeah. It's not. What I'll tell you what it's known for in Barnsley. If you put a donkey up for Labour, it will get in. And unfortunately, we've had some donkeys in the past. You know, yeah. I understand that.
But the thing is, I don't want to rip Labour. It's not what my channel's about. I am neutral. We will get on to ripping the Conservatives in a minute, so
yeah, okay.
be happy about that one. But the simple fact is, I said 10 months ago Corbyn's position was untenable. For 10 months, Mr A said nothing. The general elections come along, he's growing in the votes, and all of a sudden Mr A is calling me out. So 10 months ago, he was nowhere to be seen. The thing is that Corbyn has, realistically, looking at the manifesto, gone from where he was and gone slightly more towards the centre. He's come away from his position,
yeah.
Which obviously means he knows his position was untenable. So 10 months ago, I was right.
You were, definitely.
Now, in your personal opinion, as a socialist, I'm going to keep saying that, in your personal opinion, is the current manifesto that the Labour Party have possible?
It's like a Christmas present list for me. There's all these things that you'd like to have, but unfortunately, I'm not in a position to buy every Christmas present that I might want for myself or my wife. I've got to cut
what you can't have.
I've got to get what I can afford to buy.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I mean, it's you know, a lot of people find it a good idea that we nationalise all these things, but how are you going to pay for it? I mean, I'm all in favour of renationalising the railways because they're making a pig's ear of a job. The private companies, and it was given away in the first place.
Yes, it was not.
But unfortunately, what they're talking about, if people read the manifesto, is they're not going to nationalise it. What they're going to do when the licences are up, they're going to just refuse to. They're going to take over the licence in essence. Yes. But the problem is, you can take the first one to come is in September this year. It's the East Coast Line. And they can take over the East Coast Line if they were in government at that time. But there is no rolling stock included in that deal. The rolling stock belongs to Virgin.
Yeah, the company that
actually runs it.
Yeah.
And there's billions of pounds worth of rolling stock, and you can't go to the shop and say, "Can I have
3 or 4 of those trains,
Four of those trains, please, and deliver them today."
Yeah. So
you're talking about 10 years delivery for something like that, and then you're going to have the companies going to hold them to ransom.
Yeah, because they're going to technically have to rent the rolling stock until such a point as the replacements have been built.
That's right. So it's a pipe dream.
And then they've got to actually tender the contract for the rolling stock and what country's going to get it. Because if it's built outside of the UK, and how many truck building companies are in the UK? So where's it going to be?
There are areas at Doncaster that there's companies that would build rolling stock.
Yeah.
But you know, again, they don't come off the shelf. We don't have them. It's not like buying a ready-made suit. You can't just say, you know, you're a 40 short.
Exactly, and things like that. But then again, of course, he wants to nationalise the electricity companies, the water companies, and so on and so forth.
You know, I mean, they were all given away in the first place, but that's beside the point. Unfortunately, we're not in a position to do that now because, number one, we're owned by foreigners in most instances, foreign companies. You know, so I don't know how we would do it.
It will be. It could be done, but it would cost a huge amount of money, and
we'd be 50 years. Picking the pieces up, getting the cost of it.
Well, at the moment,
that'll be the taxpayer.
The manifesto looks as though it would cost an extra £250 billion. The current debt of this country stands at 1.7 trillion. So you're talking he'd increase that to £2 trillion.
Yep.
Now, 1.7 trillion. That's 90% of the current gross domestic product of the UK. That works out to £25,000 per person. I don't mean employed person or employed and retired. I mean everyone. That baby you're holding in your hands, 25 grand debt on their head as well.
Yeah.
Yeah? So to increase that is dangerous, especially at the point, because the thing that people are forgetting is we are in a random, unprecedented geopolitical situation in the Brexit.
Yeah.
In that we're leaving the EU.
Yeah.
And the other thing, okay, yes, great, 26% corporation tax, lovely jubbly, take on the bigger companies as long as it doesn't affect the smaller ones. Otherwise the smaller ones, how are you going to, are you going to get an extra 6% loss? I mean, I'm a standalone limited company, is it going to hit me? And I'm just on my own. But that's immaterial. The simple fact is, if you factor in trade from Canada, you have children who live in Canada, yes?
Yeah, I do.
You have been to Canada many times.
Yeah.
So, okay, we leave the EU, we get trade in from Canada. What is it? It's £1 is 1.6 loonies or Canadian dollars, yes?
Like that.
Roughly that at the moment.
It's
So, 26% corporation tax in real terms for a Canadian, and I'll get my calculator out just so as I know I'm not going to do this wrong, would be 41.6% to them.
on equivalent currency.
On equivalent currency, because obviously they're investing in this country, they're making money in this country, but the amount that they would lose, so they would have to put their costs up in this country in order to balance that loss. I'm not saying they're just going to take the loss, obviously, I'm not that stupid, but they would actually have to put that up to make the money that they should be making.
Mm.
So, again, it might be 26, the figure is a low figure globally, but 41.6, I'm guessing, is a little higher than the tax rate they have to pay in Canada.
I don't believe they would bring industry over here if that was the case.
No. I mean, there'll probably be ways around it, things like that. But again, it's another one of those manifesto points, because one of the other things that Mr. A called me out on is go through the manifesto and say which points I don't agree with. Well, the renationalisation, although some say, like yourself, that it's a good idea, others would stand there and say, well, the reason it was privatised in the first place is because it was dangerously underfunded. And we were suffering the blackouts from, obviously, lack of electricity generation, and the rolling stock was quite old at the time. But everybody has their own views.
I know that. I understand all the arguments.
Yes, left and right. I mean, you lived through, obviously, the blackouts and brownouts, because obviously there wasn't enough power and stuff like that, and so on and so forth. I mean, I grew up where we still had blackouts quite regularly, or lack of power cuts. And I, to this day, have multiple candles in my house and boxes of matches. Just because it's something that's ingrained in me from when I was a kid. I don't need them, but I've got them. But again, that's bashing Labour, but it's bashing Corbyn. The thing is, I just don't believe, personally, that Corbyn is right.
Well, neither do I.
No, you don't.
No, I don't. I number one, I mean, I've told you before, I voted for Brexit. And he wasn't in a position to hold the party together and tell them, the people have voted for it, then you toe the line. And he got all these guys that left. Well, they didn't actually leave the Labour Party. Personally, I think if they'd had a pair of balls, they would have resigned and had an election and stood as an independent and gone that way. But, that's what they should have done. Theoretically, they were in...
Again, that's...
but
the major thing...
But it was his fault that he couldn't hold them together.
The major thing here is that you are a socialist of the same generation as Corbyn. I mean, you say 73.
I'm 73, yes.
And Corbyn is 68.
Yeah.
So you are pretty much... Well, you are the same generation, let's be fair.
I'm a member of the Labour Party, so...
Yeah. So you come from the same... part of the history, you come from the same socialist movement, you were energised by the same arguments, and yet you won't vote for him.
I won't vote,
and
not while he's in this house.
And the funny thing is, the vast majority of people of your age, I think it's over 65, aren't voting that way either.
No, and a lot of people are saying it's because the Conservatives are looking after us. They're not looking after us.
No, hell no.
I mean, it's...
We'll get on to that in a second. They're definitely not. Let's be fair. Let's be honest here. I mean, neutrality. Yeah. But this is what I don't think the younger generation can get their head round at the moment. You lived through it. You you know what it was, you know what it was supposed to be, and you know what this incarnation of it is.
Yeah.
And you're not voting for that. It's got
That's
nothing
correct.
to do with you being a racist, bigot, or a Brexiteer or anything like that. It's not the incarnation it should be.
I'm a socialist. I was born a socialist. I was brought up in a deprived background, and I'll always be a socialist.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that the Labour Party can serve my needs or the needs of this country at this time. And I think part and parcel of that is because of Jeremy Corbyn. I didn't particularly like Blair, but at least he kept the party together. He managed it. And this is the problem with Corbyn. He's not a manager. He's a good orator when he comes on and he talks to people like that. He's rubbish when it comes to being put under pressure, like he was shown the other day with Andrew Marr and what have you. And what's the other guy?
Paxman.
Jeremy Paxman.
He did go light on him.
He tried to start googling information of a question had been asked.
Women's, what was it? The Women's Hour. Was it the Women's Hour? It was Emma. I've completely forgotten her name now. I'm really apologetic to any women watching me. But when he was asked about how much one of the costed policies would cost the childcare, he had to get his iPad out, and then they had to interrupt him to move him on from that question.
Yeah.
And do you actually know that underneath that, lots of people were starting to call Emma a Zionist? Underneath that interview, she had to be a Zionist for asking the question.
Yeah, well, a lot of people jump to the
anti-Semitism coming into this. That's dangerous.
Yeah. To be honest, to be fair to the Labour Party, I think this slur that they put on him about being anti-Zionist,
I think he's wrong in the general.
I think people have taken advantage
of an old wives' tale kind of thing. Well, he's not really a wives' tale, but the old interpretation that.
You've got to remember that the Fabian Society, who was the thinkers of it, there were quite a few Jewish people in that. So
yes, again, but it's just that. It's the resurgence of calling somebody who questioned Corbyn a Zionist.
Yeah, you're right.
It's the entire principle behind doing that.
Unfortunately, this is the way the media goes at this time of the day. It's not good, but it's fact.
I know.
People jump on things and they label somebody just because of the views, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bigot because you've said something that doesn't agree with what they said.
I know. That's the crux. Thank you for doing that. I wasn't expecting you to say that. But that's the crux of why I'm making this particular upload. You have to label somebody who doesn't have the same opinion as you. I have been labelled a conservative, UKIPper and neoliberal by Mr. A because I think Jeremy Corbyn is a potato. But
I think we can all put labels on people.
Exactly.
We've got to be very careful about what we do in that respect. If anybody wants to label me now, you can label me as a retired. I'm a socialist, and I'm retired, and that's about it.
Yeah, you own
and an old
man.
An old man.
Yeah, an old nuts man. But you own who you are. The point of my channel is I've always tried to be neutral and just cut through the layers of BS and say what I think.
Yeah.
Say what at the time makes sense. Now, I still stand by my fact that Jeremy Corbyn's position is untenable if he stayed on his damn position. But he moves continuously, and he's getting all these votes. One thing I'm going to ask, and it doesn't seem to be being covered by anybody at the moment. In the last general election, UKIP got 12.5% of the overall votes cast. Yeah? I think it worked out to one seat or something because they didn't win enough constituencies, but they got 12.5% of the overall votes cast. Now, according to mainstream theory, because in this general election they're predicted to only get 4%, so that's an 8.5% of overall votes cast disappeared, all those voters are going back to the Conservative Party. However, the Conservatives started at 48, now they're on 43. Mathematically that doesn't add up.
No.
Yet Labour have gone up essentially 9 points that are known. I mean, they're guesstimating 10, 11 points, but 9 points. So it's a bit odd that UKIP have gone down 8.5% of the overall vote, and Labour have jumped pretty much at the same time.
Well, let me tell you something about that, shall I? I'll tell you a story now. Many years ago, in 1957, John Diefenbaker, prior to the election, he was the Conservative leader. He was a Conservative leader, and prior to the election, the polls predicted a landslide victory for the Liberal Party over the other party. Mm. When the election came along, the Conservatives under John Diefenbaker had the biggest majority that had ever been in Parliament in Canada. Mm. So, and somebody said to John Diefenbaker after that, he said, "What do you think of the polls, Mr. Diefenbaker?" He says, "Well, it's okay when I take my dog for a walk."
Yes,
and to be honest, after this last election, I think people should be looking twice at the polls before they decide.
Yeah, because they're always
this
up
is
and
what's, I think people have got to get it into their heads who they want to vote for, and don't let the polls make a difference to whether they go to the election or not.
Yeah, exactly, because that was one of the major
issues.
Don't vote. That was actually one of the major issues during the EU referendum. Most people, myself included, we believed that it would be a vote to remain. I even said something on my channel. I thought it was going to go 60-something% remain and 30-something% leave.
I voted to leave, but I believed it was going to go the other way.
Yeah, and a lot of people didn't vote. I mean, I'm planning on going to Canada, so I didn't think I had a right to vote in that kind of a referendum, so I didn't, and it's well known I didn't. But a lot of other people didn't. And then, of course, that obviously, because not many people vote, the percentages...
But you've got to understand, there were a lot more people voted for at the referendum than in the votes in any election.
Yeah.
And what's more
important? It did energise a lot of people.
I would have thought that a general election is more important to vote because that's the people who are going to govern you for the next 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So
But getting back on point, because you went off on the Diefenbaker point, and I'm trying to draw a line between voters going from UKIP back to Labour, not to the Conservatives, because obviously Labour are jumping. Mm. So is it plausible, just plausible, I'm not saying it's fact, that in the last general election UKIP didn't split the Conservative vote, they split the Labour vote?
I think it's nobody's good. No, there's no 100% certainty of what happened in this last general election. No. But I think people who voted UKIP were more likely to vote Conservative. So I think they probably lost as many votes as the Labour Party did. Mm-hmm. I think, to be honest, people were so disillusioned with the way Labour has been organised recently that they didn't vote at all. That was the biggest problem.
Yeah.
But then again, it's just my opinion.
Again, it's all opinion. Yeah. But anyway, in the fairness, in the spirit, I should say, I was going to say fairness, and I don't know why. In the spirit of being neutral, let's get on to probably the enemy of most of your life, the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
So, where do you stand on the current Conservative manifesto, and what the cuts and the things that the Conservatives have been doing?
Well, to be perfectly honest, you look at both parties. I think the Conservative Party are more in a position to govern the country than the Labour Party are. First of all, I fairly like Theresa May. She doesn't. Mm-hmm. She's quite good policy-wise. She's not very good under
pressure
questioning. No. She's not very good. No. But then neither is Corbyn, and he's one of the things you've got to be able to do is to manage people. And I don't think you manage people if you can't get the Labour Party members to vote, to toe the line, the MPs.
Yeah. No, but so obviously you think Conservatives are the best place to get us through Brexit at the moment.
Well, that's another thing. Brexit, they're the only party I can see that will push Brexit through, and she seems fairly set on the idea that we'll either have a good deal or no deal.
I don't see a no deal being a possibility.
I don't.
Because I don't think anybody in the House of Commons would vote.
I think that's just a little bit of posturing by the government in that respect. Because it's happening, the EU's doing exactly the same. They're taking certain lines. But when it comes to the talks starting, I think they all realise that the best for everybody
Yeah.
is that we get a reasonable deal. We get a reasonable deal, they get a reasonable deal.
Obviously, the EU don't want to give us a great deal because then other nations that aren't happy being in the EU will vote to leave. But at the end of the day, they don't want to be really, really harsh and virtually destroy us because how will they look to the rest of the world?
Mm.
So, because they've got to... Because at the end of the day, people forget, the EU has still got to attract trade from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And if they put huge sanctions on us or they're really nasty to us, they basically destroy us just because we used our democratic right and triggered Article 50, which they put in at the Lisbon Treaty.
Yeah.
Right? Just because we did that, all of a sudden they're going to be... People might be a bit... Well, we'll help Britain, but you can go bug yourselves.
Yeah.
Do you get that kind of idea? So I think in the long run it is just going to be kind of a middle ground deal. It's not going to be great, but it's not going to be bad. And
well, that's the best we can help.
Yeah, that is the best.
You know, and there's not got to be any winners or losers in this game because you know. But this is a problem with politicians. They all want to turn around into the voters and say, "Well, look, see, we did better than the others did." And
yes,
and it's going to happen with the EU politicians. So it's got to be somebody.
We showed them. We showed them, so on and so forth. But one thing, I read an article, and it was. Corbyn instilling the politics of envy. Do you believe that's how he's trying to win votes? By making people envious of the wealthy?
He's talking communism now, because this is the difference between socialism and communism. The idea of communism is that everybody is equal. And unfortunately in this world, people are not equal. No. You know, you can't expect a doctor who's had 20 years experience and he does open heart surgery and is able to transplant out,
so on and so forth,
to be an equal to somebody who washes dishes
or drives trucks.
Most of my life I was an electrician, so you know I would not expect to be equal to him. No. I expect to be treated
equally,
at least reasonably.
Not so much paid and respected.
You can't expect
in that kind of.
And envy is people are envious. I'm envious of people with money.
Yes,
I get a little bit annoyed with so many billionaires in this day and age, but you know, and I'd love to be one. But, you know, but
I get annoyed.
Not everybody can run a .com company and make billions.
No.
Otherwise, you know.
No. But the thing is, one thing that annoys me a lot about billionaires is they'll always jump on the bandwagon of you need to give to charity to help third world countries, yet their bank account is big enough to sort third world countries out.
I've been in third world countries, I've worked in them, so you know that. And the money that goes to these third world countries never gets to the people. It finishes up with the politicians in those third world countries, and they finish up with massive bank accounts in Geneva. Mugabe's a prime example of that.
Yeah, he took loads of that. We're getting off topic. I mean, I think people watching me are going to be like, "Oh, come on!" So I might have to come back at a later date and do another interview with you. But again, let's now take it away from my dislike of Corbyn and so on and so forth. Okay, whatever. Let's go to the Conservatives. Do you think the cuts that they are making too deep and too quickly?
I don't think so. I mean, it's. I'll be honest, I think it's annoying to a lot of people who have never been out of work, and I've been out of work for a short time, and the only benefits I ever got were 2 weeks on unemployment pay in all the time I've been working. Yeah. But I know a lot of people in this area are quite capable of working and are earning far more benefits than I earned as a wage. So it is annoying in that part. But I think there has to be a benefit cap. The only time will tell whether it's right or wrong. This.
Do you think it's right? So, do you think it's right that benefits for under 24s have been cut?
No, I don't. I think anybody can be in a position where they require benefits. I'll just add to that I think benefits sometimes to some people, to a person on benefits, they think they require benefits to buy a 40-inch telly and a motor car. I think that's what annoys a lot of people.
Is that they don't spend the benefits on survival.
Yeah, I mean,
they spend it on.
My family were on benefits when I was a
A nipper.
A nipper. My dad didn't work. He had a heart attack when I was 5 years old at the pit, and it was the National Coal Board. And the first thing that happened to him at work was he was fired because he'd had a heart attack. It wouldn't happen these days, which is a good thing.
That is, benefit.
But we lived on benefits for years. But I was 12 years old before I even had electricity put in. In the house, we were in rented accommodation, So my first aim was to buy my own house and
so on and so forth. I mean, an aim of mine is to buy a house, but I just can't at the moment. But again, that's my mismanagement of my money when I was younger. To be fair, so the thing is, benefits shouldn't be cut based on age. They should be. People should be means tested. How are you? Where are you? It's a case by case, and the thing is, they're trying to group it.
Very difficult.
Yes. I know somebody who's been on benefits for a long time. He's literally full-time employed on benefits, about 20 years now, because he's got back problems. Well, the hardest thing to diagnose in history, and I know he plays five-a-side.
Well, I'll tell you something. You probably know I worked as a personnel manager for the last few years of last 10 years of working. And I've had people there been off work with bad backs. And somebody came in on one occasion and reported the guy. He was on full pay, on sick pay, and he'd been off 6 months. And he was fitting carpets.
Yeah.
And
somebody noticed
somebody actually took a video of him with a roll of carpet on his shirt.
And that's the thing. When people do that now,
there are thieves, that's what I call them. Yeah. The thieves in the system.
But that's the thing, when people do that now, it becomes massive. It's headline news, as though it represents everyone on benefits.
Well, it doesn't, that's the problem.
As you know, my mother died of cancer. She suffered with cancer for about 5 years. She was on benefits. She didn't look like she had cancer because of the wig and stuff like that. She could still drive a car. She had a disabled badge, and she was claiming benefits. So, of course, when you see some knob, shall we call them? I'm trying to use polite terminology as much as possible. But when you see some so-and-so, in the newspapers, he looks perfectly fine, playing football, but he's claiming he's got this, that, and all the other stuff, people like my mum will get abuse. Because they look normal, but they're not. And this is the issue. And again, going back to the thing about cutting benefits for under 24s and capping benefits, it's a case of, it's the politics of envy, but reversed.
It is.
It's like Corbyn obviously going after the rich and, using, benefits cheats, blah, 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 look how much they're on. Well, if it's 23 grand a year, it was 26, it was capped to 23 as far as I'm aware. If it's 23 grand a year, the basic minimum wage works out at about 14 grand a year.
That's right.
How the hell do you get off of a basic minimum wage full-time job if you're living at 23 grand a year?
That's right. Yeah.
You can't.
No.
And this is one of the things I've always had an issue with, and I'm sure we will come to horns on this one, but I do not believe in a basic minimum wage. It takes away wage competition, it undermines the workforce's ability to strike for more money, because the businesses only have to turn around and go, well, we're paying what the government say.
Yeah.
And your strike is dead.
Yeah.
And yet that was a major socialist kind of policy.
Yeah, unfortunately, the unions have been their own enemy in this respect, because when they've gone on strike and there's been very little reason to go on strike, and I'm a staunch unionist. I've been a member of a trade union all my life until I retired. Yeah. Even at the time when I was a staff member as a personnel manager. Yeah. But sometimes they wave the sabre just to get votes.
Yeah.
And they call strikes which are
pointless,
unrealistic.
Yeah, they shouldn't be going out on that. Yeah.
So and the problem is, 1 minute they rule the roost, the next minute it goes the other way. The government rules the roost, and it's difficult to get a medium.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very difficult, because depending on how the companies are owned, again going back to nationalisation, depends on whether you can hold the country to ransom, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's another reason privatisation kicking in, because that's one thing that's always being forgotten, is why people allowed the government, privatise it. Yeah, that's great. People forget the reason.
Yeah.
The country's being held to ransom. I mean, what was it? Harold Wilson's government, the Labour one before Thatcher's. Yeah, the one that Thatcher amazingly won with the slogan "Labour isn't working."
Yeah.
Because of the dole queues. When he came to power, he gave the miners a 33% pay rise. 2 years later, he did it again. Essentially, mathematically, that's nearly doubling their wages in 3 years. That is not sustainable.
Can I just give you a little taster on that one?
Because if I'm wrong, this is why I'm here.
I'm not arguing. I'm an ex-miner, as you know. I worked in coal mines and...
an ex-miner, there you go, Mr. A, beat him.
But I can understand that where it needs to be a well-paid job because it's a dangerous job.
Yes, it is very, yes.
But I was working in South Africa in the 70s when the miners' strike was on and the dockers refused to handle coal. So there was no coal. Yeah. I was working in a coal mine in South Africa and, well, let me just go back a little bit. At that time in England, a big pit was a 1 million ton pit. They produced 1 million ton a year, and for that they had 2,500 men to produce that. I was out in South Africa and we were developing a coal mine, and we had 32 men working there, and we produced 1.2 million ton a year. And we were selling coal to the UK, and it was being, because they wouldn't handle it, it was coming in oil barrels. Power station coal, they were sending it in oil barrels. It were all small stuff.
Yeah.
And it was sent to, we were talking about, at that time in England, it was about £20 to produce a ton. And we were selling it for 40, 50 pence a ton. That's what the selling price was, including the shipping. Yeah,
so in theory, the miners were actually, well, the unions for the miners, I suppose, were actually putting themselves out of work.
Well, yeah, they were in one respect, but that's a different argument. I'm not going to get into it.
No.
But it was a dangerous job.
It should have been. It should have been paid because it's a dangerous job.
I mean, inflation was running then about 10%. I remember in the 70s when it ran up to about 18% inflation, and people were losing their houses because of it.
Yeah, because
that's a problem. You've got to be able to produce whatever you're making and make a profit without paying too exorbitant wages. It's a balance.
It's a balance, and of course there's always economic factors in this. But
what really annoys the working man though is that when they see massive salaries to the top, and it still does, these charities that's running about with, and they're getting multi-million-pound salaries and that. So
that's always been the case. So that is one of the side effects of capitalism, whether free market or traditional capitalism. You're always going to have the bosses, and the bosses. Yeah. Theoretically, if you think about how business works, let's say I bought a truck and I ran a truck, okay? I get a contract, and after all my expenses and absolutely everything, I make 50 grand a year, okay? Well, then I think I get offered another contract from the same company. So I buy another truck and I employ somebody. Now, obviously, it's the same expenses. Yeah? Well, I'm not going to pay him 50 grand a year because, well, I'm doing all the paperwork, phone calls and stuff, so I'm going to pay him 30 grand a year.
You've got the expense of another lorry.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm making 50 grand after those expenses, so that truck's going to run and make me 50 grand, but I'm paying him 30 and keeping 20.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, that's a perfect example of the trickle-down effect.
Yeah.
It's my money, I'm paying him in a wage because he's working for me.
Yeah.
And I'm taking 20 grand. And that's basically on a really small scale how
that's
capitalism works. Whether it's free market or traditional, that is how it works.
Yeah.
So there is actually because that's 50 grand is mine. I'm then paying him for his time. Now, should I pay him 40 grand? If I'm a bloody good employer, I'll pay him 40 grand and make 10 grand, and I'm on 60 grand. But then again, you hit that kind of ceiling, like 80 grand, I'm going to start paying more tax. So if I'm going to pay more tax, I need more money. So now all of a sudden I'm going to pay him 25 grand. Because that extra 5 grand's my tax.
Unfortunately, companies don't always run that way. They will pay what they have to pay.
Yes. Going back to basic minimum wage.
And a minimum.
Yeah, going back to basic minimum wage. There you go, that's all I have to pay you.
Yeah, well, what's the point of a basic minimum wage, paying somebody a minimum wage, if then
they can't survive?
If then they get government subsidies, rent allowance, and tax rebates and things like that.
Yeah.
What you're doing essentially is subsidising the company.
Yeah. The government is directly subsidising that company.
And that's
exactly.
the Conservative.
That's a Conservative one, but who introduced the basic minimum wage and put us in that situation?
Yeah.
Again, it's the balance. This is why I try and keep my channel neutral, so as I can cut through the BS. For example, yes, okay, it's subsidising, it's a Conservative ideal. It's a Conservative ideal, but Labour introduced it and Conservatives said, we'll keep it going, and they changed it to the living wage, which is bollocks, because you can't live on £7.50 an hour when petrol and diesel are £1.22 a litre. I mean, you fill your car up, you've got to work a week. Well, not quite, but you know where I'm coming from. You've got to work at least a day just to fill your car up. And that's the thing. This is why I like to try and stay neutral. And we're getting called out and getting labelled as something because I oppose somebody else's view is very annoying. It's aggravating, which is one of the reasons I've come up here to do this. But again, it's what do you think about the 1.5 million 0 hours contract?
I don't like 0 hours contracts at all. I think it's, and again, it's a selling point for Labour, the fact that they're going to abolish it. I mean, the problem is
there's a puss winter coming.
The problem is with Conservative governments.
Do you want to let the cat? Carry on.
The trouble is with Conservative governments, they're looked on as people that will allow things like that to carry on. You know, in the spirit of fairness, it should not be allowed.
No.
And you know, and the concept. Hey, come on. People, traditional socialists or traditional Labour will look upon it as something that would only happen with the Tories.
Yes, but again, a balanced argument to that would be at the time the 0 hours contracts were introduced, companies didn't want the liability of extra staff because of the economy, because of the fluctuating global economy.
No, but now they're taking advantage of it.
Now they are taking the Michael. But the other thing to look at is a case of if you were to reverse all 0 hours contracts, it would take some time for that legislation to come in. So the companies could essentially just say, bye-bye.
Well, they probably would to start with. There's no doubt about it.
So 500,000 to 1 million unemployed, because they would take someone, they'd have to, because of production going up. But so
or you know, the next step is that it'll go to India or whatever.
Yeah, go to another. Again, we're leaving the EU, so it could very easily go to again, that's the other thing, cost. You leave the EU, and it was, what is it at the moment? It's about 87 pence is a euro, I think it works out to. So moving somebody to Germany isn't really going to save you too much money, but moving someone to Canada, moving someone to India.
You've got to understand as well, wages are higher in Canada, so you wouldn't, you know.
Yeah.
You look to some third world economy, and unfortunately, or fortunately for India, I don't think they can be classed as a third world economy, so they'll go somewhere else then next.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, it cycles. It's you know,
well,
what goes round comes round.
Unfortunately, the situation we have now, other than your cat loving you so much, unfortunately, the situation we have now is we are quite literally picking the lesser of two evils, and the lesser of two evils is still evil.
Yeah. That's right.
It's not good. It's still evil. I personally think that the lesser of two evils would be the Conservative Party, for the simple fact they are a party of business. They are a party of attracting trade. They always have been.
Well, my only argument for
going against the grain
for voting Conservative is that they prove to me that they're better able to manage the economy than the Labour Party would be.
Right. Yeah. So that they've proved to you that one.
Change is no good if it's just for change.
Yes, if it's just for change's sake, you've got to factor in what's actually going to happen.
That's right.
But anyway, that's as neutral as we can be, I suppose. I've proved, hopefully, that my channel is neutral. That given the geopolitical landscape we're in, it would be better to leave the Conservatives in, because if they do drop the ball, if this country does become unmanageable after Brexit. Well, Conservatives will never hold power again. You've got to think about that one. Because if the Conservatives drop the ball and screw this country and we end up going back into the EU and joining the Euro and things like that, the Conservatives are knackered. They're done. They've got no leg to stand on.
Just I know you're closing off by the sounds of it now. Just one thought to
leave us with the thought.
Is that in a democratic society where you get a regular change of government or irregular change of government, there are only two things that matters. Is that the opposition is good?
Yes.
Unfortunately, no, because a party or a government is only as good as the opposition. If you've got a strong opposition, they will be the checks and balance on that government.
That is how democracy works, a check and a balanced system.
And the only thing, whoever's in power in the government, the only thing you can expect of them is to have a social sense of behaviour and not screw too many at one side of the argument and help some of the others.
Yeah, you can't just screw one segment of society because it suits your narrative. You've got to kind of be balanced. Yes, the business leaders are going to be wealthy because they're business leaders. Hopefully I explained that with the little example of the trucking industry thing, if I bought trucks.
I think it pisses people off when you see somebody like Philip Green, when he makes a company bankrupt and screws them out of the pension fund and then spends £100 million on a brand new yacht.
But then again, you get nasty people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of going on to something I don't really want to cover too much on this, but it's kind of going off. It's like Muslims. Most of them don't want to blow you up, but some of them do. Yeah. So now all of a sudden, every Muslim wants to kill you. Well, that's basically like saying America holds neo-Nazis. There's neo-Nazis live in America, so every American's a neo-Nazi. It's the thing. Just because Philip Green comes out and some of his ilk come out and rip people off doesn't mean everybody else does. Richard Branson, for example, doesn't. Lord Sugar gives a lot of money away, and he's a vehement socialist.
Yeah,
he's well known for it.
Yes.
So again, it's a counterbalance there, and like you said, with governments, they've got to have a strong opposition. And Labour at the moment cannot give you a strong opposition. If they can't give a strong opposition, how the hell can they lead the country? It's
unfortunately we're in a situation in this country where it's followed the American system, where it seems to be a presidential election.
Yeah.
And I don't think either leader of the party comes over as a winner.
Nobody wins in one of those kind of debates.
No.
Because everybody can pick up whatever. I mean, it's gone nuts. I mean, a lot of the swings and roundabouts now is social media driven.
It is. You're right.
It's people putting their opinions. I know I'm on YouTube. I understand irony, but it's people putting their opinions across and forcibly putting it across.
Yeah. Fortunately, I'm at an age where it doesn't affect me. That
you don't really care.
I mean, I remember buying my kids the first computer, and I can use a computer, but that's about
it. As far as it goes, exactly.
So, yeah.
But anyway, hopefully that's drawn a line.
Computer 101 is my level.
Yes, same with me, to be fair. I'm not exactly technologically advanced. But anyway, hopefully that's drawn a line under everything and you understand that I am politically neutral on my channel. And I can be, because if I'm a Conservative, I'm sitting next to an ex-coal mining socialist. And I'm in Barnsley. I mean, I don't think I can be any more neutral, can I?
You don't get any more Labour than this, either.
No, exactly. Yeah. So, anyway, Mr. A, I hope that's answered your question. I don't like Mr. Corbyn because I don't like Mr. Corbyn. I don't like the current incarnation of the Labour Party because I don't think they can run this country correctly. And that is it. So, if you've got anything to say to that, feel free in the comment section. I'm sure everybody else watching will say something on this. But it's where we all stand. And as I've said before, just because you believe something doesn't mean you're right. And it applies to me, it applies to Mike, it applies to Mr. A, it applies to everyone. But anyway, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share about, do whatever it is you usually do. I'll see you in the next one, whenever that may be. See you later, guys.